comes in. So we're just gonna wait for it to catch up, and there we go. We are live. We're live. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again. I know we've had a lot of problems the last couple weeks. It's been a bit of a bumpy road. Yeah. It's 2020. It's the curse of 2020. That's what it is. We're all used to it at this point. But Natalia, so glad that you are healthy. So glad that your computer is healthy. Yeah, we hope. Oh my gosh, I know. Did I just jinx it? I don't. I'm sorry, guys. If it breaks, it's my fault now. So thank you again for joining us. I think most of you at this point are tuning in every week, which is fantastic. So this is the Manga Masterclass. Oh dear, somebody can't hear Natalia. Oh no, hold on. I think I know what this is this time. Hold up. This was a mic problem last time, right? Let me just, thank you for letting me know, guys. Let me see if I can figure out. I've got to figure out how on earth I make this work. Oh, sorry guys, I'm very new to OBS. OBS is interesting for me. So I'm still sort of figuring out what I need to do here. Because we definitely need to hear Natalia. This is important. Little bit important. Let's see. Let me search real quick, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm doing a little Google search, see if I can figure it out. Let me see. All right, we're just figuring this out. Apologies, guys. I hope you guys are all well. I haven't been able to change any settings yet, so they won't be able to hear you, I don't think. I just realized this makes me sound like a crazy person. I'm talking to myself. All right, let me see. This is definitely an audio thing. I just don't know how to fix it, is the problem. Yes. Oh, goodness, guys, I'm so sorry. This is a complete nightmare. We'll figure this out eventually. We had this problem before. We had this problem Yeah, we had this problem before, but I just can't remember how I fixed it. Is the problem. It would be OBS. It's some kind of setting in OBS for sure that's maybe just not playing nice. So I'm just opening the audio settings here. Let's see. Defaults.
Hello? 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 Can you hear me now? No, can you hear me? Okay, okay. Yeah? Yes. Okay, I'll keep talking and just see if everything works. Technology. Wow. Um, yeah. Do you hear me? Yay! Okay. Hmm, hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's begin then. Should we? Shall we? Now Kae is muted. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Let's start the lesson. We are already 15 minutes late, so let's go ahead. So I wanted to start with an introduction. And this one is about backgrounds and props. So for all you who are like, I hate backgrounds, this is the time we're actually going to talk about the tips and tricks of how to make backgrounds fun to draw. So first of all, it's about this reality thing to kind of depict reality into a picture, because as you see in a lot of manga, if you compare it to other comics, if you compare it to, for example, children's comics or a lot of alternative comics, they get to kind of play around with backgrounds and make it a style in itself. In manga, that is rarely happen. Most of the time, backgrounds in manga should be very much like realistic as possible, or at least as believable as possible. One thing you can think about: a good background is a background that you don't notice. You just feel that the character is in one certain place. You don't think about, oh, that window looks crooked, or that door doesn't shut right, or I think the proportions on this stool is really weird. Then it's a bad background, because then suddenly the reader notices it. And that's the trick about backgrounds, to be able to make them not noticeable, but like you take in it, and the reader takes it in and understands where the characters are. So the first thing is reference reality as much as possible. This is very important. Don't think you know how a bicycle works. Take reference. Always check up references. And this is especially important when if you're gonna do a whole comic and the characters are gonna use their bike in a lot of frames. I would recommend you to research that bike a lot and do a lot of sketching before you do the comic. Second, make learn how things are built and how they work. So, for example, I see a lot of manga artists, and I bet there's some people, maybe even in the chat, that feels like horses are really hard to draw. It's really hard to draw a horse. Like, what does the head look like? What does the body look like? Unless you've practiced it a lot, a horse is really difficult to draw. Because first of all, we don't see them that often, but we see them often enough that we know how a horse shouldn't look like. And they are also like very close to a dinosaur in some senses. They have 4 legs and then they have a head, and they can easily look like a dinosaur if you do some mistakes. I'm not going to teach you how to draw horses in this lesson. There's a lot of really good YouTube videos that you can check out on that. But reference is so important, and learn these things before you do your manga. If your character is going to ride on a horse a lot, you should practice your horse drawings first.
I'm just gonna hop in real quick here,
yeah.
Natalia, just in case anybody can hear me. I just tried a thing on OBS, so guys, let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Otherwise, please do continue.
Okay. So that leads me to the last and third tip before we actually start this lesson. Only practice what you need to know. So if you're gonna make a manga that takes place in the space in outer space, you probably need to know how to draw a spaceship or a space station or whatever surrounding is on that planet or in space, which is mostly particles or I don't know, stars or stuff. Then practice that. You don't need to know how to draw everything. You just need to know what you need to draw for this comic. And that's why before you start a comic, make sure you do a lot of referencing and a lot of practice. So those are 3 rules: reference reality, learn things, how they are built, and also practice only what you need to know. So let's start the actual background drawing. So backgrounds. I have some photos prepared and we're going to talk about them. First of all, I want to teach you how to in either Photoshop or in Clip Studio Paint, how to make a photo into a simple background that is binary only, which is only black and white, monochrome. And this is very simple. So I have a picture here. This is actually from the Hamlet castle, the castle where Hamlet takes place, Shakespeare's Hamlet in Denmark. And I have this castle picture. And of course, sitting and drawing a copy of this, or like tracing, this is first of all my own photo. And this is very important. Another rule you need to know: everything, photos, pictures, reference art, or everything has a copyright holder, someone who created it. And unless you have that copyright holder's clearly written consent to use the photo or the picture, you are not allowed to copy it or even like sketch from it or trace it or anything. Remember, you have to own the pictures. And even if you take a photo of a car, you have to remember not to directly copyright from the photo because someone designed that car. So you have to change some parts of the design, otherwise you're breaking copyright rules. So this is very important. So first of all, this castle was built several hundred of years ago. Copyright is only held for 70 years after the death of the designer. So that means this is totally free to use, and I took the photo myself. So I may use this photo as I please. So make sure you have the rights to the photos before you use them. But when you have this photo, I go to, I think it's edit, tonal correction, and then we have binarization. So this is in Clip Studio Paint, but you also have similar things in Photoshop or any other digital program. You can also do this by hand, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to do with just this program. So I'm actually gonna, before I do this, I'm gonna make a copy because I want to do this twice. So first of all, the first layer here, the top layer, I made 2 copies and I made one of them invisible and I kept the other one visible. And I do the same thing, edit, tonal correction, binarization. And then I choose how much should be white and how much should be black. I want maybe a little bit less black. Maybe I want more of the actual shapes and windows and stuff. This looks a little bit like an old photograph from a magazine, from an old newspaper. A little bit horror-esque, but I'm gonna get to it. Wait a minute. So yeah, we choose this. As you can see, I lost a lot of the shape because of how the sun was glaring in the photo. So that could be one thing I need to think about when I take photos. I need to make sure the photos is going to be good for this. So it has to be sharp and it has to be quite even. But I can also do another thing. So I'm going to take the other one that I had below and I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to keep more. So I do it again, binarization, and I keep even more of the actual shapes like this. Okay. And then I make this bottom layer maybe 30 or 40%. And then I put the other one on top, and the other one on top I choose the layer option multiply, and ta-da, we have a background for a manga. So this is actually pretty easy. What I would do is actually go over this a little bit more add some more black lines here and there, and just by drawing in some black lines and also kind of erasing the particles that kind of becomes when you do this binarization, I would clean up the picture a little bit, maybe an hour of work, and I would have a pretty background. And it's all mine, it's all copyright, it's my copyright, I can use it as I want, and it's a pretty impressive background for a frame. So this is how you can use photos.
I was going to say,
have a question or?
We do have a quick question. We've got some feedback that this is great. Two Frame Studios saying, I oftentimes feel like I need to draw everything before getting started with any project. And I just wanted to sort of back up what Natalia is showing here. Is there are quite a lot of very well-selling Japanese manga that do this. And yes, Neftali is also saying, I was told by my brother that artists need to draw everything. It's not necessarily true. As long as, like Natalia said, as long as you own the rights to the photographs that you're using, or that you have figured out the copyright with it, then it's totally fine. I think there's a series that I read, Ajin, frequently does that, especially for large crowd scenes, or you know, maybe if something's set in the middle of Shibuya when you've got all of these like huge like flashing screens, you know, maybe you're setting it in Times Square and you don't want to draw all of that, you know, this is a good way to get around that. And of course, changing up a couple details, you know, just change it up a bit, change, maybe if let's run with that example of Times Square, maybe you change what ads are showing, maybe you make them in-universe things, you know, you can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and I think the trick with working with photos like this is to not leave it just a photo manipulation, because what we have done so far is just manipulated a photo. We haven't drawn anything. And the trick is, if you leave it like that, it's going to look like a manipulated photo. And that could be a style. So I've seen mangas who do that and that only do photo manipulations. But my tip is to not leave it that way unless it's going to be like a style, because other artists know it's a very cheap way to make backgrounds. So I really recommend you to go over it again as well. And of course, I would recommend you to only do this with illustrations. Like you say, if it's a physical place like Shibuya, or in this case, Hamlet's castle, the castle of Hamlet, and I need it to look like that place, I would probably not want to draw everything. I would probably use a photo manipulation instead. But if it's a very simple thing like a room, like a bedroom or something, I'm going to show you how to draw perspective lines instead, because the trick is to know when to use what technique for the background. So this is for complex or specific places. Don't use photo manipulations for everything. It's going to look weird. Like if you choose to do it for a simple room layout, people will know that you're too lazy to draw. So that's why we're not going to do that. Using simple sample backgrounds is another thing. You can use sample backgrounds from, for example, in Clip Studio Paint, there's a bunch of them, and there's also a bunch to download. Make sure you're checked the copyrights. And there is something when it comes to copyright, I think we mentioned it before, Creative Commons, and this is a way to use others' works and you have their permission. If you Google manga backgrounds Creative Commons, you'll probably find some that you may use. Just make sure you know that you have the written approval by the copyright holder to use it, and just because it's in a program doesn't mean it's for free, and doesn't mean it's free for you to use. So always read up the rules. You don't, especially because in some competitions, if you're joining some manga competitions, or if you're sending in your work to a publisher, that can lead to legal consequences if you haven't checked the copyrights. This is very important, because many times in the contract you're signing when you're doing manga for a competition or for a publisher, it literally says you may not use any third party, any others' copyright. And if you do, you will be liable for all damages, which means pretty much you can get sued. So don't. Don't take the risk. Don't do it. Always use your own photos or learn how to draw backgrounds. Now, like after scaring you this much, I'm gonna show you how to do it right.
So I'm gonna hop in real quick here, Natalia. This is all incredibly important stuff. So
Yes.
we've had another couple comments here. Chuneko would like at some point to talk about trees. If you have anything about trees, they need some assistance with that. And Two Frame Studios. I said Ajin. I just flipped through my copy of Ajin. I was incorrect. Ajin was not the manga that does it. It was Inuyashiki, which I do believe is published in English. And I'm trying to find a very good example of it, but particularly large scenes, there is an excellent example of it right there. Let me see if I can get this. This right here, if you look very closely at it, you're probably not going to see it on the screen there, but if you look very closely at it, this is absolutely an overlaid photograph that's just had some artwork and some tones drawn over the top. This is done quite frequently. This, there's the camera. This right here, the scene of a field. Inuyashiki does this a lot, and it's a spectacular manga. If you're not reading it, you should absolutely read it. It's only, I think, 9 or 11 volumes.
Yeah, so it's not true that that you're not allowed to do it.
No.
Just make sure you have the copyrights.
Yeah, this is published by Kodansha. This is like an actual big Japanese publishing house. So like I promise. And I just want to jump in real quick.
They know.
They do. They know. So again, this is a good idea. I do want to hop in real quick. Vibav Koneru says that they're considering they want to be a mangaka. They're 16, and they're asking if they should not go to college and just go live in Japan. No, absolutely not. This is my advice here as a publisher. You can study art anywhere. Being in Japan will not help or change that. I did. No. My first time in Japan, I did go to a tour of Yoyogi Animation School in Sapporo, where they teach animation, manga, voice acting, things like that. And what I saw in that classroom was great, but absolutely no different to going to any other course in your home country that teaches comic art. So I highly recommend stay where you are. Pick up an art class at college. Look into what you want to do. Obviously, you want to make comics, you want to make manga. That's fantastic. Speak to people that are helping you figure out where to go to college. Speak to your guidance counselor at school and say to them, this is what I want to do. What classes should I take in college? And then keep drawing in your spare time. Watch this whole series. Natalia has some absolutely fantastic advice on how to get started. But absolutely, if you move to Japan just to become a manga artist, I promise you will be extremely disappointed. That will be a really hard move. That will be really scary, and it will not help you. I see. What if I wanted to publish and jump directly? You can. Here's the thing. Learn the skills. If you want to move to Japan afterwards, you can make that move. You can make that move and you can apply to Shonen Jump later, but you got to get the skills first. And moving to Japan won't help you get those skills. I promise.
I want to also add to this. I mean, not to give you a cold shower, but the truth is that I would like you, especially you young people who play a lot of video games. Now I sound really old, but okay, I also play games. I know, but you play a lot of games, and you know that in every game you have small challenges or bosses you have to fight, and then you have the top boss, like the one you have to have leveled up enough, and you have to have the right gear to fight. That's Japan, okay? Don't go there if you're not very
Japan is the final boss.
Skilled in the language, ready to stay there. What?
Japan is the final boss. I like that.
Yes, it's the final boss. And to be honest, I mean, there's a reason. They have had time to develop a market for manga. Their manga artists are top level. Like, you really don't want to fight in that market first. You want to have some skills before you get there. And sure, there's been those who have tried and some have failed, some have managed. But I have to tell you, the people I know that have managed, it takes a lot of time from things like time to things that you don't think is drawing. It's not about being good at drawing. You have to know how the visa system works in Japan. That's so complicated. You have to learn the language on a level that you can speak it almost like a fluent native, and Japanese is very, very hard to learn. Like we're talking 4 or 5 years of intense learning for learning language on that level. And to be honest, there is manga artists outside of Japan that have proved you don't have to move to Japan to do it. I'm just saying 2 words, Tony Valente. Google it.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
he made Radiant. He lives in Canada. He's from France. He's made Canadian manga or French manga, Radiant. I think he's up to almost 15 or 16 volumes at this point. Volumes, like books, 200-page books. And he also got his own anime in Japan. So I'm just saying, you don't have to move there the first thing you do. I definitely see how you read Bakuman and you read or you watched the anime of Bakuman and you're like, I have to do this before I'm 20 because that's what they did in Bakuman. There's a reason why they have 15-year-olds in that story. It's because people like you will read it. But it's not the truth. Most people that debut in Bakuman is above 20. At least. Some are above 30 when they debut in Bakuman. So you don't have to rush. There's no reason to rush. Practice your art, become good, and arrive there with the skills before. And also studying in Japan, I know it's expensive to study in US. Japan is even more expensive. So unless you're really, really, really rich, which congratulations, you're one of few. You're not gonna stay there for long. I'm sorry, you're gonna be thrown out. It's
hard,
really expensive.
I'll hop in real quick and just and we're not saying this to discourage you. We want you to make manga. We want you to learn. We want you to be the best manga creator you can be. We just know that if you misunderstand what will get you there, you will only end up disappointed and hurt, and we don't want that to happen. This is the equivalent of I got a guitar this week, and you know what I wanted to do when I got the guitar?
Yes.
I wanted to play a song. Yeah. Do you know what I can't do yet? Just play a song. No. I can play 2 chords, but I've got to be okay with that for a little while because I have to build up those little calluses on my hands, and I have to get really good at playing those 2 chords, and then I can learn 2 more chords, and then eventually I'll be able to play like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And you kind of have to take your baby steps. I'm not going to be like jamming on the stage with Metallica anytime soon. That's just not going to happen. But thank you for your question. That was a really great question. We want to encourage all of you.
Let's talk about trees.
Let's talk about trees. Let's go ahead.
Yes. So one tip, quick tip when we talk about trees is that, just like I said before, it's all about learning how it works. So a tree is like this trunk of the tree, and then you have branches, and every branch branches out to one more branch and one more branch. And this is the trick for drawing trees. I'm just going to do a quick one, so this is not going to look pretty, but I'm just going to show you the trick for drawing trees. So the first one is learning how it looks. And the trees rarely, they don't have, they're like grass and everything else that grows upwards. So the top branches is gonna be the thickest ones. No, not that thick, but it's gonna be the thickest one is on the top, and it's gonna grow upwards. So every tree, even pine trees, I see so many people who draw these kind of Christmas pine trees, and I did it too, and that was my editor in Sweden who said to me, because I did this kind of Christmas pine tree for Amalthea. And they were like, this is pretty art, but that doesn't look like a pine tree. I'm like, what? And they're like, pine trees grow upwards. I'm like, yeah they do. So a pine tree, this is the tip of a pine tree. This is what the top of the pine tree looks like. And you have to learn that. There's no Christmas trees in manga, okay? We only have pine trees. So that's the thing with trees. You make all the branches grow upwards, and it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy. You can just learn by looking at trees and just sit and draw trees when you're outside and you find a tree, which is pretty much, yeah, a lot of places you can find trees anywhere. So the next step is adding some kind of leaves. And the trick in manga is to add black and white and to use both. So one way is to just add a lot of black, like I like scribbles. You see this? I'm just scribbling like this, and I'm just doing it around the branches. So everywhere where I have a branch, there, that's where I scribble. Like I do this kind of scribbling, and that's because leaves are gathered on branches. They're sticking to the branches. So if I have a branch, that's pretty much where the leaves are. I'm just gonna add in some in between them to make them kind of stick together like this. And I just keep on going like this. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't look good because I'm gonna add more leaves later. And then I'm just gonna do this corner here. And then the next step is I can do some leaves that are just, I just do some like this with my pen. I just press it down, and that way it looks like it's leaves like this. I may even add some branches with the leaves sticking out like this. So this way, by just going over this way, I'm gonna add more. So you see how this is a almost finished branch up here with leaves. This is with a very dark tree. If you want to add light and just add some light patches instead, you can just scribble like this, and then you remove the branches on the inside. And then you have a patch of leaves, and then you add another one on top here, maybe another one, and then you remove the branches because they are behind this leaf patch. And then also in manga, a lot of the times you add shadowing by doing this kind of this hatching technique. And by doing it on just one direction, it looks like it's like gray or shadowed this way. So in a distant, this is a tree very close up. I would just add this kind of puffs to the tree on top of each other. And the trees in the distance, I would just do scribbling, like I said. I'm just moving my pen up and down and sideways and moving it like in different directions like this, and then just making the shape of a tree, which is like a ball, puffy on the top and just puffy on the sides and then just pointy on the top. Yeah, you see there, for example, that's one way. And I don't forget the branches to make it look like it actually has a trunk. And remember, a lot of the times the trunk is dark because it's a lot of shadow. Yeah, exactly. You see there, for example.
Yeah.
And then I add, just like you see there in the picture, I add some shapes to the inside here as well. I add some, it doesn't have to be like thought out. I don't have to think about just adding the shapes with the scribbles. And then I add this kind of shadowing with straight lines. So this is a pretty simple way to make a tree shadowed tree in manga style. And of course, you have to kind of find your own way to draw a tree and how you do your trees in your style. But I recommend you to look in manga and see how different artists do and just practice. And also always remember, go back to the original, the tree, to the references. Go look at the tree and just learn how different trees. And also one more thing, I see even professional manga artists do this mistake. They forget that there isn't just one kind of tree. There's many different kind of trees, and I have done the mistakes as well. So if you go and check in Amalthea, a lot of the trees look the same. And especially when you do a fantasy manga, that's not how a woods look like. Woods are usually a mixture of trees, of sorts of trees. You have birch trees, you have pine trees, you have, okay, maybe not those together, but you have a mixture of trees. So learn different kinds of trees. You have oaks, you have redwood, like depending on what kind of wood you have different vegetation. So that's also one trick. Now let's go over to perspective lines, because this is what I wanted to talk to you about today. So we have this, first of all, when we do perspectives in manga, I'm gonna try to teach you 1 and 2 point perspective. So first of all, we have the horizontal line. Depending on where the horizontal line, this is the horizontal line. This is where the horizon is. This is where the ground ends and the sky begins. And depending on where it is, we call it either normal perspective or normal horizontal line, or this is a bird's view, and this is, I think it's called fish view or frog
Oh,
view.
yeah,
I
we
think
have a
in Swedish we
fisheye
call it
lens.
frog view.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
fish
well, that's
view
another
and
thing.
bird's view. I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. So the bird's view, why do we call it bird's view? Because this, if this was a house down here, we would see the roof of it. And that's why the horizontal line would be far up. We would be looking down. And that's, if we look down, we don't see the horizontal line, or it's far above our head because we are moving our head downwards. So this is horizontal line very high up when we're on bird's view. And when it's very low down, we are on the ground looking up. And when we look up, we don't see the horizontal line because it's too far down, or it's very low, and we just see like from maybe we look up at the tree and then we see everything from below, and we see the horizontal line very low. So if we put it in the middle, this is the middle line, and we have 1 point. This is the 1 point perspective I'm going to draw to you. And I'm just going to make different kind of this is perspective lines that I'm drawing from the horizontal line out like this. And from these lines, we can create, for example, a room. So first of all, I'm gonna just join some of these together. So this is gonna be the shape of the room or the hallway. This is almost like The Shining, like a hallway or something. So I'm gonna do that there. Yes. So this is the hallway. This is the walls. This is one wall, as you can see here. This is one wall here. So I'm gonna make maybe this one a little bit thicker so you can see what I'm drawing. Yes, that's better. So this one is one of the walls in our hallway or room, like this. And then we have the other wall is over here. I use shift key, hold the shift key to get straight lines like this, to be able to create a room. And the reason to why I show you this is because I want to show you how the basics of a room is. So what I did, I just did a lot of lines going from the perspective point in the middle. And by joining them together, like you can see that this corner here, let me show you. This corner here and this corner here is on the same perspective line. From the point all the way out, this is the same perspective line. And that's why they go to the same perspective point. And the same here, this corner and this corner is also on the same perspective line. That's why they are also going towards the same perspective point as the first line I showed up here. That way, this wall here that I've created will look like a complete, it will look like a square that is in perspective. For our eyes, it's going to look like it's in perspective because it follows this point, this perspective point. The same thing on the other side is the same horizontal line or the same perspective line that I'm going to draw on. So this now has become a box that has a back corner and a back wall and a front. So it's almost like a box that we're looking into, and we can add things in this box as well. So this is the basics of a 1 point perspective. And the second thing I want to tell you before you go further when you draw a perspective is you have to decide how big, like you have to decide the proportions of things. So I usually draw, for example, a human. And the trick to drawing a human into a perspective is to know that the perspective line is where the camera is. So if the camera is if it's a camera man or woman holding the camera, usually the camera is in the height of the eyes of the character, which means if the person is maybe 5 feet, I don't know, or 6 feet, maybe the character is 6 feet tall. And that means that if this horizontal line that I drew, the one that is very horizontal line here, I'm gonna mark it again. This one here, this is my horizontal line. If this line is in the middle of the eyes of the human that is holding the camera, the head is gonna be here. And then we're gonna add the body. And like the rules I told you when we learned how to draw the human body, the human should be 8 heads tall. So I'm gonna draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is how tall my human is. My human, I don't know, prototype, just to know how big a human is in this setting. So this is how big my human is in this setting. And I don't need to draw the details of the character. I just need to know, because with this human, I now know where will the windows be sitting, how big is a chair, how big is things in this environment. So if I'm gonna draw a chair, I have to remember this is my basics. And if I want to draw the human closer to the inner wall of my building, I also need to do it with horizontal lines. So I draw one line from the head of the character to the perspective point, and from the feet to the perspective point. I can even use, I think, another color. I'm gonna use red for this so you can see. So by using red instead, this line here and this line here shows where my character would be standing. I'm gonna make them even thicker so you can see it from the top and from the feet. And this way you're gonna see how you can put one character, even like you can even make one line for where the crotch for the character is, or the tummy, and that way you can even make sure that the character is always the same size. This is where the tummy is, this is where the crotch ends, and this is where the legs are, like this. And that's a character, the same size character, but further into the room. So if I'm gonna make a chair in this level, I know that the chair is gonna be this height and this size, but in the middle of the room instead. See? This way, this chair in here that I drew, the red chair, is proportional to the human in the front here. So this is what you need to do for everything that you put into the room. Have your model of your model character, model everything. So if you're gonna make a bed, and the bed is gonna be maybe next to this one, to be able to make the character in the back proportional to the bed, I have to make sure that this bed is sized the same size. So this is how tall the human is. This is how long the bed should be. So the bed is gonna be this wide, this big, like this. So this is a bed in the front. This is this human in the back. This, let's call this character Joe. So Joe can lay on down in the bed and be proportional, even though he looks quite small, but that's because he's further into the perspective. So now that you just add stuff, make sure you always proportion them to the character. And the second thing to make, so the second thing to think about when you're gonna make a background, first of all, you have to put everything in this room. And use this perspective line. So if you want to add a table, make sure you use this perspective line. I'm gonna go back to black, I think. And if you do the same thing here, we want to add a table. So first of all, we make sure the table is this height, because that's how tall we want the table to be. So the table should be in this height for the character. So this is how tall it should be, and this is where it should end. You see? This way the characters, like, it would be proportional to the character. So this is the size of the table, and this is the table legs. And if I just erase this that we don't need. You see, this is just the side of the table. We have the table legs, and we have the table, the top of the table, the side of the table, kind of. So now we want to make it in the depth. We would do the same thing like we did with the room. Make sure that the corners continue all the way into the perspective point. But how long should the table be? And this is tricky, but I'm gonna try to tell you some kind of rule to follow. To know the depth of something, you have to first of all decide what is a meter, or what is 2-3 feet or something in this room. And then everything can be proportioned to that. So first of all, we have to make, for example, if this is let's say this is a table with a front. So this part here we say is 3 feet, and we want the table to be 6 feet maybe. So how do we know the next step? Where should it be? Like, should it be here? Should it be here? Where's the end of the table? The first one, you draw like a line up here, and this makes a square in itself. This part here is a square in itself. You see this one I'm talking about. This is one like 3 feet deep, but it's in the depth. To make the next one, we find the middle of this one. The middle is here, and we make a line to the horizontal line, or the perspective point. And then from the top corner through the middle of the next one to the bottom, that's where the next 3 feet ends. And we do it one more time, from the top through to the middle. So the middle is, or from this one through the middle, and we find where the next 3 feet ends. So
that's so cool. I've never seen that trick before. That's really, really awesome.
So if this is 3 feet, this is also 3 feet, and this is also 3 feet, which means this is definitely 6 feet wide, and this is how wide a table should be in this size. So it looks very messy, but it's important to do these kind of calculations to be able to draw something in depth and not make it. I have seen so many people who draw like a bed, and they think, I'm just gonna make a circa place where or I'm just gonna guess where I'm gonna finish the end of the bed, and suddenly the bed becomes like 10 feet or something. I'm like, whoa, that's a huge bed, like that's or 12 feet or something. It's really, really long. It looks really weird. And also it looks weird when you put a human in it, because then the character will look really wide or really tall. So if I just had cleaned up this like this, I would just keep the actual part that I need. So I need this leg here, and I need to know where the last leg will be. So this is actually a table that, if this was a photo, a 3 or 6 feet long table would be looking like this in the depth of the room. And we could see where the end of the last leg is here as well. So that would be a leg too. Yeah. So that way we do. That's the mathematical part of this lesson. Now, so, how do we actually make this room? Yeah.
We have a few comments and questions for this.
Yes.
So all of the comments are fantastic. People are really having a great time seeing how you're putting this together. This is really useful. A couple of comments first. Anyi is currently making illustrating a Russian manga that's going to be published January 2021. Congratulations, that's awesome.
Wow.
That's really, really cool. I'm so happy for you. This is the kind of thing we want all you guys to aspire for. The Master Dude Lols, it's a great name, is asking that they want to learn how to start drawing manga. They're asking about the best order to start learning in. I would say take a look at the classes. If you go to tokyopop.com/manga masterclass, we have all of these classes. I'm uploading the images that Natalia is making, so you guys can take a look at those. You can see how to adapt from everything from creating the story to designing the characters to anatomy to all of this. And there's a comment here, like, why do I have to learn anatomy first, then perspective, then can create stylized work? Yes. You gotta learn to walk before you can run. So this is why learning the rules will teach you how to break them later on. When you create your own stylized form, you'll know, for example, the perspective in a room, like Natalia just taught, or, anatomy and that kind of thing. When you know how to put that together, you'll know how to sort of subtly break the rules so that you give it your own look. So it's really important. So I'd recommend check these out. Go to your library, check out some how to draw books, and just draw every single day. That's going to be really, really useful. And
And
we
I
actually have.
mean, the thing is, yeah.
No, go ahead,
The
please. Go
thing
ahead.
is also that the whole idea with drawing comics is that, I mean, if you want to become a mangaka, you have to like drawing, because I work full time as a manga artist, and sometimes I draw for 14 hours a day. Like I stand up, I don't draw until I eat, I don't draw until I go to sleep.
Yeah.
I only draw until I eat or go to sleep. Like it's if you don't like drawing, it's gonna be a bad job for you. And to like drawing, you first have to learn a lot of the basics to make it easy to draw. Because a part of what is not fun when you're doing something is that you don't know how to do it, or it makes everything difficult because it's always it stops you in your tracks or in your creativity because you haven't learned a thing, or you don't know exactly how to learn something. So that's why I recommend you really to start with the basics, because then everything is going to be so much easier.
Yeah.
Like the first times I held a dip pen, this kind of Japanese dip pens, everything was annoying. Everything, like the first time I used a Wacom tablet, or the first time I used my iPad and Clip Studio Paint, there was a lot of swear words, to be honest. You have to learn the basics, and then it's so much more fun. It's so much more fun to learn and to do your manga if you actually do that kind of basic work first. So don't rush it. Try to learn to love to draw manga. That's the trick.
Yeah.
And that's
Agreed.
also why when we come to this kind of background drawing, you had more question or more questions?
We do. We have a couple more. And I just want to leave one more comment here. There's another comment about reading Bakuman, and he got good at drawing in like a year. Is that true? We talk about Bakuman quite a lot on the stream for good reason. It is not. It is a manga. It is not realistic. It is no more realistic than pretty much any other manga you'll read. I mean, like using it as my example today, Inuyashiki. There are not old man robots flying around the city healing cancer patients. That's just a story. Bakuman is a fantasy version of what it is like to be a manga artist. It is not going to give you a realistic perspective. It's very fun and very enjoyable if you are interested in the creation of manga. But I would treat it with as much realism as you would treat something like Dragon Ball. It's fun and it's fantasy.
But I would say there is some truth to it, and that's
Sure.
the part that is about how the editorial, like not all, but a lot of how the editorial department works. And the reason why they did Bakuman was to teach young people how to become manga artists. It's not to become a blueprint that you have to follow. It's more about, if you can learn about, for example, how many pages usually you should make for a competition, how to think about a competition compared to a series, one-shot versus serialized works. Those kind of things are very important. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty, like, for example, there's a lot of discussion within the health community about people posting their food online, like, this is what I eat. I ate a banana today. That's the only thing I ate. That is gonna be lead to unhealthy habits by other people, because other people is gonna think, okay, one banana a day is enough for me. No, you're gonna die if you only eat one banana a day. That's the only thing you eat. You're gonna die.
You need at least 2 bananas a day. Everyone knows that.
At least two bananas a day. That's what I know. So just like not giving food advice too much online, because it might lead to food disorders, or you have disorders with your food, eating disorders. The same thing is with how to draw comics. Like, I can say, oh, I draw 14 hours a day, but that's also because I don't do it all days. I make sure I have breaks. I make sure I take breaks when I feel sick or when I feel tired. I give myself space. Like, it's not about doing it 150%. It's about doing it in a healthy way. And Bakuman, I mean, I don't want to spoil it if some people haven't seen it, but Bakuman really shows that as well, how the main character Mashiro, he kind of exhausts himself, and a lot of Japanese mangakas does. So don't do that. That's stupid. You're not gonna last long. If you want to create manga until you're like Akira Toriyama or like until you're 50, 60 year old, you have to take care of your body and you have to do it in a more learning way. So my recommendation is, sure, there's something you can take from Bakuman. One thing that Mashiro does very early on is that he learns by first of all he draw a lot of things before he started making comics. He drew every day like in school, and that's why the other main character Takagi Shujin, why he picks up Mashiro, because he's like, you're good at drawing. So Mashiro didn't start drawing manga and then start drawing at all and then started making manga. He already knew how to draw many things. So that's the first thing. He learned the basics of drawing and then started making manga. So that's one thing to learn from Bakuman. Second of all, when it comes to Bakuman, he does some things right. First of all, he practices by copying from masters. And copying without posting, it's not your art, but you're learning from it. You're learning the techniques, and that's a good thing. I would recommend you to do I think he actually copied 100 pages from 10 different mangas. 100, that's 1,000 pages.
Wow.
And usually you say if you do something for 10,000 hours, you become good at it. And drawing one manga page might take you 10 hours. It might take you a full day to copy one manga page, which means 1,000 manga pages. If you copy them, you're gonna be good because every page takes you 10 hours. So sure, he becomes good by practicing. Can you do that within a year? Sure, if you have financial security and you don't have to do anything else. His family supports him in many ways. If you don't, a lot of young artists, they have to have a day job. They don't have time for drawing all days. So it all depends on your own development. I've seen some young people, especially when you're still you still have the possibility to work full time with your art. I mean, when you have children or when you have a full-time job, you're not having that time. But I've seen some people who become really good in 1 year. Usually they become really good in one thing or very few things. But I've seen people who have been really good at drawing comics and then become even better in 1 year. So I would just say what you need to do is to not get satisfied. Always practice, always learn. I mean, I've been doing manga for more than 14 years. 14 years professionally, probably 20 years if I count like my development time before I got published. For 20 years, and I still think there's a lot of things I need to learn. And that's my recommendation, to never stop learning and always practice your art. And don't think that just I have to do it once and then I know it. No. Nothing works like that. There's nothing that you can do once and then just you know it. Nothing.
Completely agree.
It all demands practice. Yeah.
Well, we have got
so back to the work.
Chat is going crazy, and we're getting so many really great questions.
Whoa.
But because a lot of them are not about this particular class, what I'm going to recommend to you guys, we don't want to discourage questions because these are great questions, and I love the enthusiasm so much. Please send an email after the class. You can email Kae, that's Kae, at tokyopop.com. Send me all of your questions. I will make sure that I can answer which ones I can answer. I will pass along any to Natalia that are directly for her, and we will make sure that we answer your questions. But for the sake of time, because we are running a little close to the edge here, I want to make sure we get through this class. We did have one on-point question. I'm so sorry. Haloed and Red Rose has asked this so long ago, and we got very distracted. Was asking about, let me see, where is your question specifically? Any tips for more rounded objects in perspective, or things that aren't perfectly in line, things that are crooked, so maybe like a vase or something like that?
To be honest, there's very few times where a rounded object, if it's completely rounded, like a vase or something, you don't see the perspective as much, like unless you have like a fisheye lens or something. So usually what you see, if something is rounded and in perspective, is if something is like a almost like a tube or a blob or something. So that's when you have something that have a depth, that have like a length, and you can put it in the perspective. So if I, for example, would if I would do let's zoom in here and put a vase on this table, just to show you. If I would draw a vase on this table in perspective, I wouldn't mind the perspective, because that it probably wouldn't be noticed. Like I would just draw the vase as is, like this, and this would be the vase on the table. But if there was also a tube, like maybe a paper tube on the table, I would see the front end of this tube, and the rest of the tube would be in perspective. So then I would draw the perspective lines for the tube like this, from the top and the bottom of this front end that I saw, and then I would round it off where I want the tube to end, and that would be like something rounded in perspective. It would still look rounded, but if one would look closely, I mean, if I just would have free-handed this, it might not look like it was in the same picture, because it wouldn't follow the perspective. But because I follow the perspective lines, this tube looks like it's actually laying on the table. And anything you can create into shapes of tubes or in boxes and add to this. And this is what comes to my next step for actually making background drawing fun. I don't think we have time to go through everything fun I would like to talk to you about, but hopefully I can make some own videos on my channel about background drawing in the future. We'll see. But I think one thing I want to show you is that when you draw a background, let's say this is the background in your comic, and you're like, oh, I have to draw a background. This is so boring. First of all, my best tip for drawing backgrounds is think about the background as a character. Every background has a history. It has an emotion. It has a story to tell. Someone have been there and touched it, or it has grown from something, from a small seed to a big tree. Or if someone built that wall, like how did they build it? If it's a wooden wall, maybe there's like you see the wooden boards or something. Like maybe we see the kind of necks and parts of the wood that was like carved. Or now I will do this more properly, but I'm just gonna show you how to think about, like, this is like, you have to think about the background as a character in itself. So for example, on this table, I'm gonna think, what kind of room is this? This looks like a bedroom because we have a bed, we have a chair. This is some kind of bedroom. What kind of things would I have on my bedroom table? So for example, if this was a bedroom, I have to decide whose bedroom is this? Is this an old lady or a young guy? Or is this like a family bedroom with a double bed? No, it's just a single bed, and it's in the corner. So it's probably a kid's room or a young person's room or a really old person's room. So I'm gonna say this is a young person's room, and this young person do have some kind of vase on their table. So maybe the person really cares about flowers. I'm gonna add some more flowers. I'm gonna have like something hanging here with more flowers, maybe. So that's a more personality thing. I'm gonna think about, okay, so what more can I add here? The character likes flowers. Maybe they like books as well. So I'm gonna add a bookcase. So you see how I kind of start telling a story while I draw the picture. I'm like, okay, so the bookcase is over here. It's a quite big bookcase because the character really likes books. And yeah, I'm gonna make it in perspective, of course. So this is the perspective line here to the perspective point, like this. It's quite a big bookcase. I'm gonna make it divided into two because there's a lot of books in the bookcase, like this. So while I draw, I just think about what kind of usage would be in this room or in this environment, and I kind of start telling stories to myself. Okay, so on this bookshelf, on top level, they have a lot of books about art. The next level is maybe crime stories. They like a lot of these kind of pulp or crime stories. Maybe they have one that is just boxes because they have a lot of magazines or something. And then they maybe this bottom part is just some locked doors because they have like the important papers or something. Like I start telling myself a story while I draw, and this way it becomes so much more fun to make the backgrounds because it's a character. It's something I have to create, just like I create a character.
I actually want to hop in
Yeah,
with a couple
you
of
have a question?
examples here, actually. So we have these two titles.
Yes.
These are two boys love titles that we do. Don't Call Me Dirty and Don't Call Me Daddy. And I actually translated this one. My little claim to fame here. But in the
Nice.
backgrounds in these books they focus very much around a Japanese snack store, and the the location is so important to the story that, like Natalia was saying, it becomes a character in and of itself. And Don't Call Me Dirty
Mm-hmm.
is the first book. Don't Call Me Daddy is like a prequel slash sequel featuring different characters. And when you see the locations from the first book pop up in Don't Call Me Daddy, it really is like seeing a character come home. It makes an impact. Um,
Aw.
and and one more
Yeah.
example that I want to show you guys. This is a horror manga. This is one that we've collected into this big collector's edition called Dark Metro, which is short horror stories, and every chapter is uh, based around a different stop on the Tokyo Metro, which I think is just a really cool concept. So in every single short story, the location is a character, is a part
Mhm.
of it. So don't think about your backgrounds as
Wow.
just boring and way to fill up space or whatever. I love this that Natalia is pointing out how important they are
Mm-hmm.
as a part of your story. Don't forget that.
Yep. Yes. And so it could both be a place that we as readers would be reminded of other scenes that happen there. So you can even add like small Easter egg, they're called in the game industry. You add Easter eggs. Like you can add, for example, a photograph in the background that is of two characters that maybe broke up before, but the one of the characters still keeps the photograph. Like stuff like that would be like, oh wow, for the reader they would be like, wow, this is so and like emotional to see this, or like add, I don't know, yeah, memorabilia or small fun things. I even know that some I have done it myself as well, add themselves or their friends as background figures, and that's also one way to make a background fun to draw, because you can you feel like you have more at stake than just a background. It's just not just a room you're gonna make, but it's actually a place that people will go back to and they will find details. So I know, for example, in Clamp, in the mangas by Clamp, they have made XXXholic, and I think some titles used to be TOKYOPOP's titles as well, some of the Clamp titles,
Yeah,
and
we did publish some
they
clip titles back in the
often
day.
add, yeah, and they often Clamp, which is a collective of 4 or 5 artists, they often add characters from one manga in the other manga in the backgrounds. So you can even read XXXholic and find characters from Tsubasa and stuff like that in there, which is really fun. So I think that's also one trick to make backgrounds more fun to draw, is because you make it a story and you make it part of your world. It's not just a place where you hold things or you have to have your story. It's actually a place where you kind of develop emotions for this place. Finally, it's all about techniques to finish and polish, and I'm not going to do this in this because I don't have time, but the trick with polishing is thin lines in the depth. When you have something like, for example, this bookcase, I would draw with thin lines, while the table will be a little bit thicker lines. I would try to, and also one trick is that when you draw with a pen, you get like these dynamic lines. You can pressure the pen and it becomes thick or thin. Don't do this when you do backgrounds, unless you do organic things like leaves or trees or trunks of the tree. This kind of dynamic lines is for organic things. When you draw like this kind of stale backgrounds, it's important to draw the lines as even as possible, to make them as dead, I call them, as possible. When you have like dead objects like wood, or like when you have things that have been flattened or kind of made flat or made straight. So that's also one way to make make sure you learn how to draw the straight lines. And also check in manga. Usually what they do, for example, if you have a big wall like this here and you want to add some kind of texture to it, one thing manga artist does is they just draw this kind of top to bottom lines and just a little bit straighter, a little bit more polished than I do now. But by adding these kind of lines, you're adding some kind of texture to the surface. Don't leave surfaces just white. Always go for references, see how other manga artists does, and don't get bored by art. Like if you have like a big white space, add something there. Like add a frame. Like, okay, so here's a poster. Fine, the wall is not empty. There's a poster there. I can even add maybe a character from the manga, like a singer-songwriter or something, like some kind of pop idol on this picture, and then that would be like an Easter egg for the reader. So don't let just space be space. Make sure it has some kind of connection to the characters or the story. And finally, one more thing before we stop. This is of course how you draw a background 1-point perspective. I wanted to show 2-point perspective, but we don't have time. So there's more videos on YouTube about how to do 2-point perspective. I think some of the tricks I gave you here was what you needed to hear right now. And also what I want to finish up with, this is of course when you draw a more impressive, if you're gonna make an impressive picture, like a big panel that is kind of introducing the reader to the environment, sure, you can sit and draw everything like this. But after you've done that shot, you can focus on just adding things in the background. So for example, if you had a character and it was in this room, the character was in this room, and we have already introduced this room, we can in the next frame just add, this is the main character speaking, and in the background we see the bookcase, and that way we know where the character is in the room, and we just have to draw a little bit of the bookcase. We don't have to draw all the other furniture, we don't have to draw the depth and perspective all the time. We can just add a little bit bookcase, and then we have a speech bubble here. So we don't even have to draw the full bookcase. It's enough to just a little bit, and we know where we are in the story or in the room. We can add some texture to the roof just to give it a little bit more depth, but it doesn't have to be more complicated. A little bit more polished than this, of course, but it doesn't have to be a full a full perspective background every frame. Just make sure you have those kind of money shots, the big frames that introduces a scenery, and then the theater scene is set and you can start the drama. So that's a trick. I think that was pretty much what I wanted to talk about. We didn't have so much time for props, but for the props, it's pretty much the same. Reference is so important. Make sure you have rights to use the references, and learn how they work. Learn how a sword works. Check up videos of how you use the tools. So when I did, for example, Amalthea, I checked a lot of videos of sword fighting with double-handed swords or single-handed swords, just to see how you actually move with a sword.
Yeah.
That's important as well.
Yeah, very much so. You will,
That's
again,
pretty
this
much
is
the lesson for today.
The same advice goes for this as goes with almost everything here. You will, if somebody knows what they're doing when they draw a sword fight or someone riding a motorcycle or riding a horse or whatever, you won't notice it, but my goodness, you'll notice it when it's wrong. That's what'll happen. It'll stand out. The idea is you want this kind of stuff to almost blend in so that it looks seamless. I go back to it a lot. I go back to Ajin. It's a fantastic manga, but the movements, and you see, I'm trying to find the example. I just looked at it earlier. But whenever you see them in a vehicle, you see them riding a motorcycle, the energy behind it, the movement, the way that they lean, it's very clear that the artist studied this. That's the kind of thing you want to look at, is look at your props, look at your backgrounds, make sure they look like they blend in, like they fit, like they work. And hopefully your audience won't notice in the best way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys. You had so many great questions today. We got a little off topic, so sorry about that. We really do want to help you guys be the best manga artists and writers you can. You guys are so welcome. We're getting thank yous in the chat. Thank you again, Natalia. I can't thank you enough for doing this. This is a wonderful series.
Yeah.
Again, any questions? Off-topic questions. If you have more questions about perspective that we didn't get to cover in this class, if you have questions about previous classes or other things, please send an email. Kae@tokyopop.com. That's Kae @tokyopop.com. Or you can go to our website, tokyopop.com/manga masterclass, and you will find all of the information there. You guys are fantastic. I love that we're getting all of these comments, and thank you. We love seeing you every week. This is absolutely wonderful. And again, check on the website. You will see all the previous classes. You will see the materials that Natalia's drawn, and like the script, thumbnails, things like that. Yeah, we should be back on schedule. I think the next one is in 2 weeks, hopefully with no more technical glitches.
Yes.
But I'm, fingers crossed. Who knows? And yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Natalia.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay, bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.